Hello, 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 everybody, and happy Friday to you. Welcome in to another episode of The Breakthrough Show. Fun fact, everybody, it is actually the last episode in the first half of the season. I keep saying this on every show and I say it every year. I'm well aware of the repeats that I do, but time, I don't know where it goes. I truly don't, but I'm super excited to be finishing off the first half of the season with somebody fairly local to me, which we don't always get on the show, but I always look for the gems, and I think you're going to love this one today. So as we've been talking about, this season is called Beyond the Breakthrough because some of the most life challenging moments that we experience don't arrive as victories at first. Sometimes they arrive as disruption, as questions, as moments that force us to completely re examine what we thought we understood about health, about healing, about life in general, and of course, ourselves. Today's guest knows that journey deeply. After years of working within the traditional medical system as a physician's assistant, her life took a deeply personal turn when her daughter experienced a severe mental health crisis that changed everything for their family. What followed was not only a search for answers, but a powerful shift in perspective, one that led her to a deeper exploration of the gut brain connection, holistic wellness, nervous system health, and the way our bodies and minds are profoundly interconnected. Her work today is rooted not just in professional knowledge, but also in lived experience. And I personally think that that is the magic that goes hand in hand. She helps families navigate healing, regulation, and wellness from a more whole person perspective. This conversation today is about more than just medicine. It's about listening differently, questioning courageously, and finding your way through uncertainty when the path forward isn't always obvious. So please welcome to the Breakthrough Show, my friend, Bethany Miller. Bethany, I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a treat to be here. And I love that we have that local connection because it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like, you always see that. So
Absolutely. And it occurred to me as I was running the trailer coming into the show today, you're actually in there too. I don't know if you noticed that. There's there's a little tiny clip that I took from when there were three of you that were at the Capitol and I was
yes.
talking to you guys through the screen. There's a little teeny tiny clip there. So you're in the intro too, which
Yeah.
was very
Yeah.
cool.
Because Jessica and I really met through advocating through homeschool stuff. So that was really, it's such a great thing to build those networks for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm thrilled to have you on the show. As I mentioned, you're fairly local to me here. If you want to let everybody know where exactly you're joining us from. And I'd also love to know, and this is something I kind of ask a lot of our guests, what that word breakthrough means to you.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm over in the quiet corner, Connecticut. It's one that kind of is oftentimes forgotten. There may be more cows than people out this way, but actually, I'm an army brat. I was born in the army, and so I moved all around. But of course, how that works is you marry somebody who's lived in the same town as entire your life. So we're here over in Canterbury, Connecticut, and it's been a joy. It's actually really cool. It's very quiet as advertised. So breakthrough for me, I think is just really looking at something in a completely different light. And like that was our situation for sure, where, you kind of are traveling this path, right? And thinking that there's this predestined thing that you're moving towards. And then all of a sudden, there's that shift, right? And you start seeing things in a completely different way. And it just shifts your entire perspective about really everything, right? It's like looking through a different lens, like that rose-colored glasses, maybe, but just kind of seeing things in a very different light. I think is probably breakthrough would mean to us in our family. Yeah.
So I mentioned in your introduction that you were a physician's assistant at one point. Before we get into, which we will very soon, kind of where what happened and where you're at now,
Mhm.
what drew you to originally becoming a physician's assistant? What was it about that
Yeah, I
piqued
mean,
your
I
interest?
always knew. I don't know, I just always knew I wanted to be in medicine. I wanted to help people. I wanted to heal, right? There was just kind of this healer's heart, right, within me. So like I just always knew that that was where I was going. So even in high school, I was going into medical school. Once I ended up getting into undergrad, is when I hated chemistry. So there was no way I was going to take chemistry as a minor. I took healthcare administration as a minor instead, and that's where I started seeing what was shifting in medicine. So that's where I started hearing about HMOs and kind of the business of medicine that was kind of coming in. But that's also where I heard about physician assistant. I was like, oh wait, I can actually go for a abbreviated amount of time, spend an abbreviated more less money in order to actually just be with patients, right? And that was even what we were hearing. As a PA, you can spend more time with people, and so there was that part. So that's what I learned in my undergrad. So then I just transitioned right into PA school, and just that was like the path. um, yeah, and it was good while it was good, but
Yeah.
then all of those things that I was learning about that were disrupting the system kind of came in and impacted my career and impacted a lot of people's careers, unfortunately, in medicine right now.
Right. I
Yeah.
want to ask you because I think this is going to be so important for our conversation going forward. What was your personal relationship to allopathic medicine, to the, kind of traditional medicine conversation, or your relationship to doctors, or, any medical professionals?
I mean, I was all in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think, when you're trained in that model and you just kind of grow up in that model, you learn it, right? It becomes
Mhm.
your entire environment. So it's the culture that you're just bred into. So you don't question a lot of it.
Mhm.
So there wasn't a lot of departure from that. It was pretty much, yeah, straight and
Yeah.
narrow. It was the path. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of comforting for me to hear that in a way, because even though Bethany and I know each other, we've met in person and all of that fun stuff. We don't know everything about each other's life story. We get social media snippets, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
one of the things that I've shared very openly on the show is I have medical PTSD. So some of the things that I went through with medical professionals and all of that, I really have struggled in that way in my life. And so, but one of the things I share is, I grew up over here in Groton, which is where that main headquarters for Pfizer is. And I feel like everybody that I knew growing up was either a doctor, a pharmacist, a
Mm,
scientist at Pfizer. I still have friends that I went to school with that are very much involved with Pfizer. And so I feel like growing up in this area where that's sort of course, those are our friends and they have our best interest at heart. And they're people that I like knew
yeah.
personally, right? I feel like that really impacted my ability to advocate for myself,
Yeah.
to speak up when I felt like something wasn't always right, and to pay attention to my body
Yeah.
rather than what other people I didn't know were telling me about my body.
Yeah, 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 for sure. And imagine my surprise when I'm in it and deciding to departure, right? So like, that's a journey, right? That's a journey that I think we all have to go through, really. And I think, just even outside of medicine in real life, I feel like the 30s is where you're just kind of unlearning everything that
Right.
you had learned from,
Yes.
I was just like, I did all of these things. This is what I was supposed to do. And then you arrive here and you're like, wait, that's not what I thought at all, and so there is this kind of unlearning that has to happen. So you're definitely not alone in that. And I think a lot of people still to this day struggle with, how do you advocate for yourself when people don't see things the way that you see. And the good news is there is, I think, kind of this more prominent movement of more functional medicine and things along those lines where people can access that. Because my daughter has the PTSD from medical stuff, and she's young. It's just going through that when they were kids, and having to support her opened my eyes. I didn't have to have that lived experience from my eyes. I just was able to see it through hers, which is heartbreaking to have to go through, right? And that those were your people, and just not necessarily anymore, right? It's hard. hard.
Right. Well, as you mentioned, it is one thing to go through something yourself. And I can also relate to when our children are going through massive health issues. It is very hard as a mother to
Yeah.
not take that personally,
It
to not
really is.
feel
Yeah.
like it's your fault.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, there's no way around it. I don't think
Right.
you can counsel. I mean, I do a lot of coaching now, and I have to coach my own feelings around it. But the subconscious is always kind of telling you there's something in the background. What if I did this differently or something? But the great thing I can say about for our situation is I didn't ignore those signals when they were happening, and I did act, and I did become an advocate, and I did switch gears, right? And so part of that learning was kind of listening to my gut, and so I guess that's really what I want to talk to people the most about is listen to those. Those are instincts. They're creeping up that are telling you this doesn't feel right in my body or their body. So like you have to acknowledge those signals and find a different approach to them and not just kind of push through sometimes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, she said the magic word gut, which I'm sure we're going to talk more about as the show goes on. We're going to take a super quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more with Bethany about her story, where she's at now, and all of this is going to be a great conversation. We'll be right back after this.
Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every day for exclusive programming, special events, and a community to call home, where we invite you to explore, change the way you look at and live your life, and go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Breakthrough Show. Today is Friday, May 15th, 2026. I'm Jessica Dugas here with Bethany Miller today. And we are, I was sitting here on the break going, I didn't bring any tissues to my desk, and I probably should have done that before we started.
Yeah.
I am a crier. I'm sorry. It just is what it is.
So the good news is there's a great hormone release. So like anytime somebody tells me that they cry and they're saying sorry about it, don't, because that is your body's way of healing, right? Our body is so innately really cool and it wants to heal, and hormone release happens through tears. So just let them fly, friend.
Well, I mean, I'm a good hormone releaser. I will give myself a pat on the back for that.
There you go.
So before the break, we were talking a little bit about how Bethany got started in the realm of being a physician's assistant, and we started to touch on a little bit of what happened to bring her out of that space. So I mentioned it a little bit in the bio that you had some things going on with your daughter, but was that the first thing that you started questioning, or what was that first thing that made you go, I'm not sure if this is for me anymore?
No, it was really the first thing. I mean, it was really just kind of as busy mom. So I guess everybody, not even in the medical field, can relate to this. When you've got kids, they change everything, right? And you're trying to balance all of the things. You're trying to, be a professional, show up at career, show up for your husband, show up for your kids, so that's hard enough, right? And so so I mean, I think in the medical system, it was not provider or patient focused anymore. There was some loss there that I was feeling. But ultimately, It was just, my daughter, as she was growing up, wasn't kind of growing out of certain ages and stages. We were like, well, it'll get better when she gets a little bit older. And I was still struggling. So when you're struggling at work and then at home, and you're just feeling like you've got all of these balls in the air, and it's just a fragile space where you feel like you're just kind of dropping everything, you're not doing anything well. My mental health was kind of starting to suffer, but I was trying to show up and be an advocate for my daughter, not understanding really what was going on with her, right? Kind of diving into the medical as best I could, trying to find all of the resources, and really just coming up empty-handed, really, with answers. And that was a really frustrating place to be, just all around, right?
Yeah, I could not imagine, because it is like I shared, I had a very interesting time in my medical history, and then adding in things that my children have gone through as well. But it's frustrating enough when you go to someone who you're told is supposed to have the answers.
Yeah.
They don't have the answers, but then I couldn't imagine being in your position. You're supposed to have the answers and you don't have them. What are some of the things that brought up for you as not just a mother, but also in your job?
Just, incompetent is the first one that wants to come out, but I don't even know if it was incompetent, just, depleted, right? Like you just, you're grasping at straws, but like, how come I couldn't, like, that was what I loved about medicine, like putting these puzzles together. And like, my daughter was the trickiest puzzle that I couldn't connect the dots, right? Like I couldn't figure out like what was going, and just kind of pouring into some of the research, but she wasn't really exhibiting certain things. So like, it was really hard to put her in a box. And I'll tell you, we were talking about breakthrough earlier. There was one time where I finally had heard something called PDA, pathological demand avoidance. It's something that's not even recognized in the United States. It's across the pond. Somehow people across the pond can have this, but we don't. Go figure. So, but I remember hearing about this for the first time, and I just started crying. It was the first time in like anything. It was a podcast. That I just was so. I was crying. I was like, this finally sounds like my out of the box kid that I can't figure out. We, of course, have not found a provider here in the United States that necessarily sees that. Again, it's not in the DSM-4. But anyway, it is this gray area sometimes when we have neurospicy kids that you're trying to fit them, and there's nothing that quite fits. So you still have that puzzle piece. It's really still outside of the puzzle, and you still don't feel like you have a complete picture. So there have been a few breakthroughs, but still always kind of feeling like you still are not sure, right? There's still this uncertainty.
Right.
So it's a wild ride, let me tell you.
Yeah. I can relate to that. Absolutely. Yeah. So like one of the things I think, and we were chatting, for you guys that don't get to see our green room with our coffee and cookies. We were chatting a little bit before the show about, just how a lot of things in the medical world are changing. And one of the parts of that conversation is kind of, for every diagnosis, there's sort of these boxes that are supposed to be checked. And they even tell you, like, in order to get the diagnosis, let's say there's 20 boxes, you have to have 18 of those or whatever to be diagnosed with the one thing. And I've met people, and I've also fallen into that myself, where, 18 is the threshold, but I've got 17. And they won't diagnose me, or I can't get the help. Have you experienced any of that? And what do you sort of do in that situation?
Well, and honestly, even worse in the mental health field, right? So like the mental health field, it's the one where we're talking about the brain, right? But there's no diagnostic anything. Like nobody looks at it from a different perspective. So at least when you have something else, so let's say a heart condition, you go in with chest pain, you've got an EKG, you've got an echocardiogram, you've got a cardiac catheterization. You have different ways to look at that, and then they can diagnose and they can kind of give you this thing. The mental health field is completely different. Nobody's looking at anything. They're going based on symptom clusters only, right? Which is the one thing I would change about the mental health field. There's not one thing. There's a lot of things. But there's nobody that's really looking. There's nobody looking, again, unless you're getting, there was one clinic that we found, but it would be thousands and thousands thousands of dollars to access it because it's, it's not in our routines. To check blood work and check, like, is there an infection? Check, what does the health of the brain look like? Any of those things doesn't happen. It's symptom clusters only. In fact, when we finally got our diagnosis for my daughter, it was something called DMDD, which, again, as a PA, I had never heard of. It's the new kid on the block. And really, it only came about because bipolar was being diagnosed in extreme numbers all of a sudden. Bipolar is a genetic condition. So you can't have an epidemic of bipolar. So all of a sudden, there's this disconnect, right? So bipolar is being diagnosed for kids, but it's genetic. We can't do that. So what do we do? They really just kind of formed this new diagnosis based on symptom clusters that was DMDD. So there's really no guidelines. There's no, additional screening. There's nothing that you do. So even parents, when they go, oh, yay, I have something, I know what we're dealing with. You're like, no, we really don't. It's just trial and error like everything else. And so it's a frustrating place to be for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
it was interesting when we went through some of the stuff with my son. It was sort of because they were looking at that realm of bipolar, but again with the boxes, and he didn't click enough of the boxes to be diagnosed, which was fine. But it was like it was either this or not. There was nothing like, well, there's some things that might be close. Let's explore. It wasn't. And this was like within the last couple of years.
Yeah. And even, when we were looking for, ADHD, we finally got an ADHD diagnosis. You think that that's going to open up all of these resources to help. It doesn't, right? Like, so there was all of this, like, it just felt like a maze. You'd go and you just kind of hit another wall and you'd have to kind of backtrack. And you're like, how do you put this all together? So it's rather frustrating for parents as they're navigating that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to what things, the things that happened with your daughter, can you share what that season, we'll call it, of discovery was like for you and your family?
Yeah. It was a long season. It was more of the same when we were in the mental health thing, trying to do all of the right stuff, all of the things that we were told by providers. So we avoided meds as long as we could for my daughter, and did a lot of holistic supports as much as we could. I even saw an Ayurvedic doctor. We were looking for stuff outside of it, and still nothing kind of hit. But eventually, we decided, okay, we need medications. So we started medications, and unfortunately, she's one of, I want to say it's not uncommon, but one of the kids that had suicidal thoughts on meds. And so that happens more often than we think. And so it becomes really tricky when you're in that position where you're like, okay, we have to do this. But, and even I knew, right? I know the black box warnings, but you kind of just don't think it's going to happen to you until it happens to you. And so my daughter had suicidal thoughts on medication. So we had to take them off. And then in taking them off and putting her on another one, she just was spiraling. She gained 40 pounds in a 3-month period on the new med, and ultimately ended up in a psych hospitalization. So, and that was all around the time, again, when I told you I was so disappointed because we got discharged from her psychiatrist. Like at the time when we were leaving the hospital, we had to have an appointment on Friday in order to check all of their boxes so that we were in. And all of a sudden, they canceled our appointment, and we had no information about why we don't have an appointment with these psychiatrists anymore. It was just like everything was just falling. And this had been 13 years in the process, so it had been a long time of overwhelm, fight and flight, all of those things, just kind of a chronic burnout. So we were just kind of defeated and deflated for a long time and just kind of sat there. It was almost like, okay, just don't touch anything. Don't move. if we just cover our eyes, nothing, we won't see anything. We're in this period of stability. There was nothing stable about it, but it was this period of okay, we just have to manage where we're at because we didn't have a team even anymore. And so we were stuck. We were stuck for about a year. And it was only because my daughter had ridiculous cravings on this medication. It never kept her satisfied. The medication was doing metabolic. I was worried about, did we trade in psych stuff for diabetes and, all of this other stuff that was going to come. She had the 40 pounds on top of her. She was not thriving, but she was always like craving, the wrong foods, carbs. And so I couldn't convince her to eat a vegetable to save her life, right, kind of thing. And just knowing what I know about health, that was a bad cycle to be in. And so I had seen a friend talking about these psychobiotics, and they were special probiotics that support mental health. I was like, well, I need to get her on a probiotic. Why not try it? And so we did. We just started some daily psychobiotics, and within a week, her bloating had come down. And, she was kind of starting to come back to life, and I started seeing smiles again. And it was just this whole thing. And the clinical studies for the products that I use and talk about are a 90-day period. And so I was like, okay, well, we're going to do this for 90 days. And over that timeline, I started seeing her have more stress resilience. So, despite stressors and everything, where she would be so easily triggered before, she was able to kind of just let that kind of go off of her shoulders a little bit more. So we were seeing this change in her, which was amazing. But when I saw those changes for her, I started drinking it, and I got out of my own fight or flight because, as mothers, you set the pace for the household, right? And so like there was this time when we were all in burnout, we were like ping pongs, right? It was like dysregulation was just like, who's more dysregulated today? So, and we would always hear, bring your calm to the chaos. I had no calm available. There was none there. So I needed to do that for me. And so then I could show up as that person to help her regulate it. And that changed everything for our family, just pouring into ourselves. And that was where I started looking at things differently. That was that breakthrough that I was like, oh my goodness, if we can start these shifts in kind of this healing, right, in this root cause place where the gut does everything. And that's when I just started deep dive into the gut brain axis. And I was like, man, this is like the secret puzzle piece for so many people that they just don't realize.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think when we're in it, right, we're going through, especially on a physical plane, because we have the physical and then it affects our medical. Our mental, physical.
Yeah.
And so we feel like there's got to be, if I get a diagnosis or if they figure out what's wrong, I'm going to have to do this, and they think of all of these things, medications and therapies and all of these things. And you're telling me right now that you just started pouring into yourselves and what a difference that makes.
Yep.
And so I want to focus on that for a minute, because I think this is what so many of us are trying to do, which is to look at our lives a little more holistically and say, okay, it's not just one thing. We're not going to take a pill and magically be better, even though that's what I think a lot of us want.
Yes.
We want to just snap our fingers
we
and
like
be done.
easy buttons. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
So
and
what was the combination of things, I'm sorry, that I wanted to ask that you were kind of doing?
Well, I think it becomes a catalyst, right? So like once you start feeling better, so once I started doing the psychobiotics, and those really just are very special probiotics, they're very specific strains that we know are clinically studied to actually shift the gut so that it produces more serotonin. I mean, I think people are still blown away when I tell them that 90% of our serotonin is actually produced in our gut. And people are like, what? Like, we always think about anxiety and depression, it's all up here, but it's like, no, your gut actually has a substantial role, right? 90% of your serotonin, which is your happy hormone, is produced in your gut. And unfortunately, we've had decades of gut insult, right? So we've had standard American diet, microplastics. Now, we're not eating as well as we should. We're not walking as much. I mean, once I started diving in and finding research about how walking supports your gut microbiome and that it can be as effective as antidepressants, I go back to the times where I sat in front of my patients and I was like, I did them a disservice by not telling them to just go walk 10 to 20 minutes a day. And I know it sounds simple, but there's really a lot of science behind it. And so it was this catalyst. So once I started putting those psychobiotics in there, I started having energy again, right? That capacity, I call it, like that margin, all of the things we want in our life where we're not feeling like the whole world is closing in on us, but we actually kind of have this Right, that breathing. And so once I started looking into that, and really the key principles I teach is I use a sense mnemonic. So I talk about sleep 100%, right? That's one of the biggest predictors, supports your gut microbiome, everything. Sleep is everything. Exercise, nutrition. I do talk about intentional supplementation, and then evaluation, which is like mindfulness and prayer and gratitude. And there's so much science behind how that actually supports mental health in
Right.
very big ways. And so once I started looking at that through that lens, that was that breakthrough, that lens that shifted everything. And I was like, I can actually impact people in a different way, right? It doesn't need to be a med.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that idea of having like sort of a system
Yeah.
or check boxes to measure everything that you choose to do for yourself, for your family, for your bodies against those things.
Yeah.
Is it going to serve us in those areas? And I'm wondering if you have something similar when it comes to choosing practitioners for your family as well. Do you have like sort of a checklist or a process or, values that you put up against when you're finding people to work with for your family?
Not really. I think it comes down to just kind of a gut instinct at this point.
Mm,
It's just kind of, and we've been discharged from, you were talking about medical trauma. Like my daughter had a panic, and so she wasn't able to get a vaccine, not because we were refusing one, but because she was in full fight or flight panic and
mm,
got discharged from practice for that. So like, you can't convince me they were motivated to be a benefit and a help to my kid. So that was really disheartening, right? So that was one of those things. But that was some of her PTSD. So now we just when we walk into rooms, we walk differently, I guess. We have a different
mm,
eye, and we just rely on our gut instinct. And I remember even when my daughter was um she's amazing. She really is such a great girl. And I love that, through some healing in the gut brain axis, and like spoiler alert, we actually got her off of those meds that were not
mm.
serving her well. She lost the 40 pounds. She's thriving as a 16-year-old because we got to the kind of the root of what was happening. But I still remember when she was, being um, forced, essentially. We were kind of trying to coerce her to get this vaccine, and she was kind of standing up for herself and being like, don't you, and she's even saying to the provider, don't you know that I have like this fear around it? And so I know when we left there, and she was because of course, as moms, I'm probably not the only one that said, if you get this, we will go to lunch afterwards or something.
Mhm.
And she didn't get it. It was a 45-minute debacle in there. And when we left, she was like, I'm probably not going to get dinner. I'm like, you are absolutely going to go get dinner, Isis, because like I was so proud of her for advocating. And even I couldn't do it at that point. I didn't even say, I should have called it sooner and been like, nope, this doesn't feel right for her body. We're not doing this. So she advocated for herself. And I was just so proud of her. So I'm like, you bet your bottom dollar we're going to go get you lunch. And that's when we got the discharge papers 3 days later from that office. But, it's just a matter of listening to your gut. And I guess all I can say is kind of, teaching people to start doing that. And yeah, it's just it's
Yeah.
a gut instinct, I think, when you walk in and you're like, is this a person? And I always tell my daughter, we're looking for your team, right? Because your medical people should be your team. They should be all working towards the same goal. And you're part of that team. And if you don't feel like you're a player in that team and you feel like they're just doing it, like that's just not the place for you. And absolutely, if you're not finding that in traditional sources, then find that in holistic spaces.
Right, right. It's interesting because I did an interview myself lately where I was talking about kind of my history of what I had been through. And I just sort of said at the end, because we always do kind of a wrap up, what do you want people to know kind of thing. And one of the biggest things I said is to remember in every piece of the conversation we had talked about, which not all of it was about medical, I said, we seem to forget that these people work for us.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
work for us.
yeah,
And so it's very challenging because we see, the white coat, the doctor before the name, the letters after the name, and we're like, we put them on a pedestal and we forget that they are supposed to be serving us. And I think we're also in a time now, which I hope you're good to get a little controversial
yeah.
here
Oh
for
yeah.
just a minute, because I really feel like so much of the medical community is so influenced by big corporations, by what the government is telling them to do, by profits, all of these things. I feel like there's so much influence there that even a lot of them have forgotten what the oath that they took, that they're supposed to be working
Yeah.
for us as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a tricky thing to navigate for sure, because I know there's definitely some really great providers that are just there to do the absolute best. But again, when you're in that culture, that's just what it is. And that's where I know we've met over the homeschooling and even the vaccine stuff. Like, I have a shirt, good ideas don't require force, right? And so like that was, as a provider, I still always 100% believe in medical freedoms, because, and also like so many providers now are struggling with trust, but it's like you have created this condition where people can't trust you, right? And so, when I was seeing a patient and they were in front of me, again, I was trying to put that piece of the puzzle together. I can advocate and tell them all that I want, that I think would be the best for them, but ultimately that's their decision. And so I think, I think it becomes really tricky when you have providers who are kind of forcing an issue where you're not comfortable with, and that's, again, absolutely not part of a team, and causing a lot of the problems with the trust. They're really creating their own problems. Like, if you didn't force people to do something, they're more likely to do what you want them to do. So like, public health is about education, is about focusing on and how we can educate and share resources and all that stuff. It's not mandates, right? It's not forcing people to comply. That's the quickest way to get the opposite reaction, right? So,
absolutely.
So it is tricky, because I know there's so many good people that are going into medicine, and I know people that are still in medicine, and we need them. But it becomes, and also, I mean, we've seen this with the school system. Once you have a system that gets big enough, it starts feeding the system, right? And it stops actually protecting the people that it was created to serve, right? So that's the dilemma with the building a system. So it happened in medicine, where it started off with patient and provider, and then it just grew and it became much more than that, and then it starts feeding that system. Same with education. It's not about teacher pupil education anymore. It's about how do we support the system, and so that's why people are content to get out of it, right?
Right.
Just
Right. Yeah, it's tough. And your story with your daughter, to me, proves the point that this wasn't like a situation where you're going, no, I don't want to get it. I just feel like getting. There was a genuine issue there, and their response was to boo you out of the practice.
Yep. And she even verbalized it. And she's, of course, a provider in town here today, which is always interesting. But every now and then I have to go through those motions, because that stuff triggers you, right? That's those other triggers. But and I even remember when she was trying to coerce my daughter, and I said, and she said something like, well, if she doesn't get it, we may have to, dismiss practice. And I said, well, that would be really disappointing. And when that letter came, I was just like, man. So so you can't tell me that there's not some kind of incentive that is different than taking care of the person in front of you when that happens. And again, I don't know. I don't see their back books. I don't know how they run their practice, but that completely tells me that where their focus is not on taking care of my kiddo, so disheartening for sure. So
and I know that there are those practices out there that don't, like my doctor's office, they don't do vax in office. They absolutely will tell you where to go, and they also don't allow drug reps in the office at all. There's a big old sign on the door, not welcome here. And when I walk in that door, I have more confidence and more faith that they're acting on education and listening to me, like listening to my actual history, than to be, coerced in any kind of way by the dollar, by a corporation, something like that. And so,
and it's not even, it doesn't even feel like coercion, right? Like, we had drug reps that would come in, and it almost felt like a service that you were providing for your patients, because you had a cabinet that you could go to, like, for these people who needed treatment, and you had this cabinet. So it was sexier than like coercion. But then obviously you can see that path, right? So as you open up the cabinet, it's like, like, hey, I can get you these to get you started, see how you respond. And then obviously that becomes the prescription, right? If you respond, I'm not going to switch something else, based on that. So, so there is this path, right?
Yep.
That presents itself. So yeah.
Yeah. There was a movie, and I can't think of the name, but it's all was started in here in Connecticut, based on the opioid epidemic and the pain. I can't remember the name of the movie now, but it was really, really eye-opening. But that's how basically it was described in the movie as well, is they are showing this period of, it's like, don't you want to help your clients? Here's all of this free stuff that I'm going to help you help them.
Yeah.
And so the people that didn't start out to be about the dollar or about, maybe the more political side of things. They just saw it as like, oh, I'm helping people. And that's the first step in.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And I mean, we have all evidence-based stuff. So we know like what the numbers are, and you can crunch that and know which prescription to put on for a patient. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of the other holistic stuff. So like that was where it was mind blowing to me when I actually saw the shifts, not from a medication, not from, because of course, when you're in the mental health field, you're hearing, your kid has a serotonin, disorder. That's why there is serotonin stuck into the brain, whatever, nobody had ever said, hey, what about her gut, right? Like, what about that? And so when we had healing that happened there and we're able to get her off of 3 medications, because that's the other thing, not only just one medication, but we've got polypharmacy in a lot of kids. And I'm on DMDD and other groups and stuff. And like the amount of polypharmacy in 6, 8, 10-year-olds that are on 3 or 4 meds, I'm like, this is not sustainable. And like, this cannot continue, right? This is scary. So that was like, if I could have gone back in time and started focusing on gut-brain health connection and supporting that earlier, I would have. So it was such a disservice to not hear any of that throughout the thing. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you, especially as someone who was formerly in the medical field, how do you balance allopathic or evidence-based medicine with holistic wellness approaches?
Well, I think they can work together. So like, that's the thing. My daughter is still on a medication, but we use them together so that we can keep those reduced, or like we have kind of more control over that. So my son, we were able to get all of his medications, but there's always going to be a balance. And I think that's going to be hard for anybody to navigate. We're navigating that with my husband, has a health problem right now. And he's so funny because he doesn't want to. He knows we've talked so much about the pharmaceutical treadmill. And once you go in for one appointment, there's 5 more. So he's mentally fighting that battle in his brain about it. And it's like, well, this is a scenario we don't have the alternatives, and we can support it. So we do still have like a holistic person that we're going to be in contact with, so we can support it. We can get those other resources, but it is still something that we do have to kind of show up in those offices. So it's a brain game, unfortunately. And so we find our balance. And, when my husband was overwhelmed with like 4 appointments next week, I was like, guess what? I'm just going to message them on my chart and just say, hey, do we really need this one appointment? Can we just take that one off of his plate and just kind of punt that down the line a little bit. Like, do we really need that? We're in the middle of all of these other things. So that's a hard one. But I think there's a balance of doing them both, and really understanding, where there's a value in each one, right? Because, allopathic medicine is great if you have, kind of, a surgical need, cancer, emergency, things like that. There's that. But when we're looking at chronic debilitating diseases, that's where that doesn't really work as well. So when we're looking at these really chronic diseases, metabolic diseases, which unfortunately is what is kind of, just suppressing, or just kind of, oppressing the United States of America and our health, are these chronic diseases. And so if this is, and we've been trying to do this for a long time with allopathic medicine, and we're not seeing a healthier population. So that's where I would say lean into other holistic things, kind of look, is there something that is getting to the root of something that is a chronic debilitating disease, as opposed to kind of these emergency or more surgical things like that, where you need more immediate care, right? And that's where you can find those balance.
Right. Yeah. What misconceptions do you feel like people often have about the holistic health conversation? Because I think a lot of people have been sort of told one thing or another. We've sort of been just told stories about snake oil and, you
Yeah,
know, any of these
yeah,
given things. And so there's a lot of, I mean, as much distrust as I think there can be in the
mhm,
medical community,
yeah.
I feel like there's this distrust of natural things that used to be the norm.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't know, I know the whole woo-woo thing, right? So I know
Yeah.
that feels too woo-woo for me. Yeah, I think that's just kind of this journey of personal exploration of what it is. I think what I love about the products that I use is that they actually have clinical studies, so it's kind of this perfect balance of
Mm.
like, okay, at least I have the science that grounds me. Like
Here's a
so because
paper.
right. I'm still kind of like operating from this evidence-based medicine stuff. So at least I have
Mhm.
some clinical studies. They're not like, 5,000 people that were polled, in double-blinded studies, but there are some clinical evidence. So I think that's the balance for me because that's important to me. Um, that, I can find this balance of, there is some studies behind it. But the the modern world just it's just catching up, right? Like, so even the gut brain axis, now a lot of science is showing up finally to support it. But I remember, 10 years ago, a chiropractor had said something about leaky gut. And I was like, I don't know about leaky gut.
Right?
That's not evidence-based medicine. I don't see that. So even, I didn't know what to do with that. Now I'm all like, oh my gosh. And the science is finally showing up. So it just depends on if you want to be ahead of the times, I guess, and
Mm.
try. Um, so yeah, that's a tricky one, but there's so much science now that's coming about, frequencies and energy
Yes.
work, right?
Yes.
And sound healing. So there is science behind that. All you can do is kind of dive in and explore a little bit, but then there's a lot of junk science. So it does make it a little bit tricky. So I think just kind of trust the sources, kind of you have to explore. And kind of find ones that you can trust some of the sources. I always still plug some stuff into PubMed or NIH, but so sometimes you can find stuff there that can help you weed out kind of junk science. But it is tricky because there's a lot of things that are available on the market that and even in my supplement industry. So again, I talk about intentional supplements, and some people are like, well, it's just expensive urine, and way back when that's what I believed, but that's because we're talking about what you're buying off of Amazon potentially or different things. There are reputable companies that are actually supplying really good quality stuff. You just have to be able to find them and kind of know how to find them. So yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's difficult sometimes I think to weed through things. And so I have a little fun question for you as somebody who's been in the medical realm also, and I know that I feel like you and I are similar, that we're like, "Ooh, look at that. Let's explore that." How do you stop yourself from
Mm,
going down the rabbit hole of like all of the things, because there's new stuff coming out all the time, and
yeah.
like you said, sometimes it is hard to weed out, like, is this junk, is it not? Like, how do you stop yourself from like literally not researching from sun up to sundown?
Yeah. Boy, that's a great question. Um,
Or maybe you don't. Maybe
yeah.
we're both not sleeping.
No, I don't know. No, I think no, I think there is a way to turn it on and
Yeah.
off. And for me, like there's red flags that come up, I guess, where I see
Mm,
that there's, I can't find any great science about something. It's just hype, right? Like you can kind of,
yeah.
I don't know, I guess I
Yeah.
can kind of flag hype a little bit. Like I know. And then if I am curious and be like, is this just hype or is this something I just, a couple searches again, PubMed, NIH kind of help that or whatnot. So yeah, and I still get like a lot of my medical journals and stuff that I still dig through. So sometimes I can, kind of help do that. But for the layperson, it's hard. It's hard because there's a lot of noise. I mean, even, I use the natural nootropic, and even, so here's a great example, Afron Saffron. So Afron Saffron is a clinically studied brand of saffron. So that means that they've actually studied, it's called Nature's Ritalin. And so when they've actually compared to, it's a natural nootropic. Ritalin is a synthetic nootropic, just means brain enhancer. Like a nootropic is something that helps
Yeah.
enhance the brain. So, So Afron Saffron is the one that's clinically studied. Then when they did that study, they compared Afron Saffron to Ritalin. They showed that Afron Saffron did really well, right? And so that is available to people. Now the dilemma is you see saffron everywhere, but it's not the same because it's kind of
Right.
window dressing, right? So it becomes very tricky because that's not, and I have people that'll be like, I'm taking saffron gummies. And I'm like, well, gummies probably aren't really bioavailable the way that they need to be too, because you
Mm.
have to go through the gut. And then if they're not actually using the clinically validated source, then it's really, you're just taking something and you may be having placebo. It may be working, but you just can't, you can't guarantee the quality or the quantity. So usually when that again, I would do a search for like in the PubMed or something, what are the actual clinical studies, and then look for the dosing and stuff. But yeah, it's tricky. I don't know how you find that parameter. I don't know. Yeah.
We all have to determine for
Yeah.
ourselves, right? And I think that comes as part of what you've been talking about today,
Yeah.
which is that self-care, and that, pouring into yourself is so important. And part of that
Yeah.
is learning, as the great Kenny Rogers say, when to hold them, when to fold them.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
put the
Yeah.
stuff down and
Yeah.
get some rest. Put your
Yeah.
feet on the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah, and I think it requires some amount of curiosity, which is not a bad thing. And there may be some trial and error there, because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for everybody
100%.
either. So sometimes you have to try new things, right? And so, oftentimes I think people find me and people find those kind of things when they're in their deepest, darkest despair, right? And so then they're like, okay, I need a lifeline. So at that point, you're almost willing to try anything. And you just never know. So sometimes there's just a matter of try it, because I'm glad we did. I didn't expect anything of what we got. I just expected less bloating and, not feeling like she could, eat, 5 cinnamon buns in a sitting kind of thing. That was what I was looking for. And what we ended up getting was so much more. So there is a little bit of curiosity, trial and error. And I don't know. I mean, I threw away thousands of dollars of other supplements, so I could have been quote unquote duped too, right? Like we had neurotransmitter supports and we had all that stuff. We spent a lot of money at the Ayurvedic doctor, and they didn't do the trick. So I guess you almost don't want to stop too, because sometimes if you stop, you may get stuck, and that next thing may be the thing that actually moves you to that breakthrough, right? So if you haven't found that breakthrough, there is something about still exploring and still being curious, and hopefully aligning and finding people that you trust, to share too.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take one more quick break. We have our poem to listen to today, but we also, when we come back, we're going to figure out where Bethany and her family are now, what's happening that's good in their lives. We got a couple quick fire questions for you, and Bethany can tell you where to connect with her, where you can learn more about the importance of gut brain health. And we'll be right back after this.
I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart. I shall stand for love, for the world is wounded, not just my little piece of land, where I am mostly safe, where I am mostly well, but our world, everywhere, every day. I shall stand for love, because we need more light, not more death, not more power, not more bombs. I shall stand for love, so that our children are safe, so that our friends are sheltered, so that our borders are open. I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Breakthrough Show. Thank you for standing for love with us today. I've really enjoyed our conversation today, Bethany. I need to have you back to go down 9 other rabbit holes with me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I know the rabbit holes are endless.
They are truly, and there's so much to explore. And I think one of the things that I think you've touched on beautifully today, without even really saying it, and that I talk about often, is to not stop being curious, and to listen to those little gut things that come up that say, hey, maybe explore this, maybe don't let up on this just yet. So you obviously you still aren't stopping listening to that little voice. So where are you guys at today with your journey?
Although sometimes I tell you, it was really funny. We did a lot of bold, brave things, right? So, we ended up leaving my medical career in order to
Mm.
be, homeschooling. We opted out of traditional insurance and we're doing it differently. And I think at some point I was like, okay, I need to stop being bold and brave for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, just find that common ground. Like, just settle, just settle for a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to keep looking for the next bold thing to
Right.
do. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're doing well. Like, our family is thriving. I've got a 14 and a 16-year-old now, which is just insanity. And my daughter is the happiest that I've seen her. I can now. She gets mad when I call her a moody teen, but it's like every teen's moody teen now. Like, it's
It's
not.
true.
It doesn't feel like she has a mood disorder anymore, right? And so, just supporting her in a different way shifted everything. And then again, supporting. So the good news is I get to show up for people now too, which is really fun for me because I'm an extrovert. My husband, of course, is an introvert. They always marry each other. So I get to show up for other people and have lots of fun making connections and kind of and doing that. So so I feel like we finally just really moved from this place of barely surviving 4 years ago to really thriving now. And so I think that's something that everybody can access if they're again curious and trying to figure out how to do it. I think making sure that you are acknowledging the role that your gut has in supporting your mental health because that could be your breakthrough, right? And just supporting it a little bit differently.
There you go. There you go. And we want to be clear always that, anytime we talk about these transformations that we've had in our life, to access these tools or to learn how to access these tools or have, new things in our awareness, that doesn't mean that all the problems just go away. Right.
No. In fact, the problems will keep coming. And so like, that's the season that we're living through right now. We're really going through a very devastating health crisis. And it was really interesting because, I joke sometimes about that the supplements that we use and really supporting our gut brain axis helped us transition out of, this really dire situation. But I think God knew that I was really going to need them now. Right. And so, we're going through it, and people ask like, what's going on? I'm like, well, we're just going through it. It is not an easy season right now. But that's the glory of when you have a supported and calm nervous system, right? When I can show up with grace and clarity and calm instead of, the shit hitting the fan and all of a sudden you're spiraling, right? And all of a sudden you just don't know which way is up. And, so that is the benefit of actually having that. And that's that stress resilience, which I oftentimes used to think was really the skill that you build. But now I know it's really just nervous system support and having that calm in the middle of chaos. The hits are going to keep coming. Like, and I'm like, even when we get through this one, I know there's going to be another obstacle, but I know that I can show up as a better person for myself, for my family, for my husband, all of that. And so that I think is key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, before we get to tell you where you can find Bethany and learn more about your gut brain health, I have 3 super quick fire questions for you, Bethany, to finish up. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay.
We'll see how
quick we can get through it. Because somebody will say quick fire to me, and I'm like, well, actually, I have a whole story about this.
My husband probably like she's never answered a short question, like a short answer in her life, right? But we'll try.
We're gonna see what we could do here. Okay. Number 1, what's something people assume about you in your line of work that isn't true?
That I have it all together.
Oh, yeah. Amen to that. Okay.
In general, like when people see this, and again, oftentimes people see me now, and I'm like, no, friends, like you didn't see me when I was in my darkest 4 years ago. I can show up now, and you see that, but people forget that. They really don't remember that, or you don't show up. So people assume you kind of have it all together, and you don't. Yeah. Figuring it out as you go. You just are sharing some tools that helps you along the way.
Absolutely. All right. What brings you peace faster than anything else?
Prayer.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
What part of your life gets the least attention but matters deeply to you?
Oh man, what part of my life gets the least attention? Me? Oh, my husband answered on the sidelines. Me.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. We're gonna sit with that one. But I guess that's true, right? Because you pour into everybody. And so
Yep.
oftentimes, but I do feel like I'm taking good care of me, but
Yeah.
clearly there's still work to be done. And I'm going to let my husband lead the reins with making sure that happens. So,
Well, you know what's interesting with that too, because I feel very similarly. I think I take really good care of myself especially as far as like where boundaries are concerned, of
yep.
like taking that time to rest. Like I know you see me as busy, but
Mhm.
in between, sometimes I say I'm busy because I'm resting.
Yes, no, I hear you. Yeah, yeah, because I do the same thing because I have it built in, and so yeah, I hear you. So I feel like I'm taking good care of myself. And my husband also, he may have a different perspective because mentioned he's an introvert. So taking care of him is going away. Taking care of me is showing up at my walk into wellness walks where I walk
Mm,
in community with people, and that is actually taking care of me
yeah.
in a way that he may not understand as well. So
Right.
there's that too. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. That was great. Okay, I'm gonna throw in another one just because you're
Okay.
you're
Just
fast.
because you
You're faster
stole
than
it.
we thought. Okay. What is something you've learned recently that surprised you?
Um, what is something I learned recently that surprised me? Um, that I still struggle with the medical system a little
Mm.
bit, and being in that is still, my husband is wrestling with that a little bit, but as somebody who's supporting him, I wrestle with that a little bit too. So yeah,
It's a real thing. It
yeah,
truly, and you can know a lot of things and you can feel like you have a lot of tools, but it is something that I feel like we have to keep being present and
yeah.
in the moment and just navigating those waters as they as they
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
along.
It's that, that bear hunt, right? That story. Like, it's really such a great story. You can't go over it. You can't go around it. You can't go under it. When you're going, you have to go through it, right? It's just this process of going through it. So we're all going on a bear hunt every single day. So,
We're hunting bear, everybody.
yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right. I've got Bethany's website scrolling down the
Yeah.
bottom there, riseuptowellness.com. The link is also clickable in the show notes in the description. So I want you guys to visit. What can people expect when they work with you, Bethany?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I do life and business coaching too, so people can have a one-to-one. I really talk about Carl Jung talks about. There's a quote. He says, "Until you make the subconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." And
Mm,
so, with my life and business coaching, we really kind of dive into what are the subliminal things that are kind of driving the ship, so to speak, in order to kind of really start focusing on how to get to the other side of that. So I do that with wellness coaching too, which is very different than therapy, right? So,
yeah.
so life coaching is very different, but so I do that, and then I also connect people to supplements if they're interested in trying psychobiotics and Afron saffron and high dose omega 3s or high quality omega 3s. All of those things that do have some clinical studies, I can help connect them to find the right tools for them, which is really great, so that they can kind of get out of their own fight or flight too. And it's really the easy button, right? So as we said, people like the easy button, but it also has this really, really root cause gut brain axis repair that happens, which is pretty amazing. So yeah.
Love it. I love it. Make sure you guys visit Bethany's website. Anything, Bethany, that you would like to leave with everybody today? Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I don't know. I hope to connect with people. I do a fun walk into wellness too. So, like, if you're local in Canterbury, Connecticut, or something, come walk with me. That's one thing. I think people don't understand the value of that. There's actually hope molecules that happen when your muscles are working that actually help your brain too, right? You can grow your brain. That's one of the best things in the last decade or probably even longer that we've learned about neuroplasticity. So, your brain is not fixed. We still have the capacity to grow that. Walking is one of them. And so everybody, hopefully you just keep focusing on how to grow your brain and support yourself in a really meaningful way. So.
I love it. Well, thank you. So this was so fun, and I hope it was fun for you
It was
too.
a
And
blast. Yeah.
love it. I love it. And Bethany and I will stay connected. We're, like I said, we're connected on the Facebook, and we're also connected in person. I'm home. I am hoping, just as a little side rabbit hole here, that things will start to settle down in this
Yeah.
realm of
Yeah.
parental rights and all of the other fun time that we're having here in the state of Connecticut
Yeah.
and really across the
Mm.
world. I'm seeing
Yeah.
so.
And honestly, I think it's gonna be interesting when they try to roll it out and they realize they don't have all the resources. So I think it's gonna be something that's gonna ultimately be rolled back. So I think they're putting their cart before their horse, right? So I think
Yes.
they're like, yes, it's almost like here's my wish list, but we all have a wish list, but when it actually comes time, push comes to shove, to actually employ or deploy what it's meant to carry out that wish list, like they're not gonna have it. So I think things are going to shift. So I'm not worried about it. It's something that's another way to get joy. Just kind of control what you can control, and you realize you can't control that. So, we're a do not comply family anyway, but we're gonna get as many do not comply people on our list, and in our tribe. You know who your people are. But I think when push comes to shove, we're really not going to have much to worry about because they don't have the resources, they don't have the people, they don't have anything in order to do it. So I think it's a wish list. It's really just it's silly, to be honest with you, but
I
eventually they'll
agree.
realize that. Yeah, they'll realize it too. We just know more
We're
about it.
just ahead of our time.
We are. We are. So yeah, so I'm not worried about it, and I
Yeah.
think things will settle down.
Well, thank you again for being on the show today, for sharing all the amazing, and for, being so willing to share your story, your perspective, and such a deeply personal journey with us today. One of the things that this season continues to remind me of is that breakthroughs rarely happen in isolation. They often come through seasons of uncertainty, discomfort, questioning, learning how to see life through a completely different lens. And today's conversation was such a powerful reminder that healing is rarely one dimensional. It's layered, it's personal, it's emotional, it's physical, relational, all of the things. And so, thank you for bringing both your professional insight and your personal heart into this space. So, I really appreciate you today, Bethany.
Well, thank you for the invite. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. To everybody watching, I'm not going to see you again on this show. You know, you're going to see me, but just not on this show until September 4th. Completes the first half of season 9 of the Breakthrough Show. And so, if this is a conversation that encouraged you in some way today, let it be a reminder that asking questions, staying curious, and advocating for yourself or the people you love is not weakness, it is care. And so I want to remind you that every day is a great day for a breakthrough. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas. This is Bethany Miller. Bethany, I'll see you in the green room after the show, and I will see all of you in September. Bye, everybody.